The president did make a decision to intensify that support by offering a small number of U.S. Special Operations military personnel to offer them some advice and assistance on the ground as they take the fight to ISIL.
White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest earlier today announcing that the president will increase troop levels in Syria. The move comes more than a year after our first U.S. airstrikes there, but will this shift on the ground help or hurt in the fight against ISIS? For more, let's welcome in former Defense Department spokesman J.D. Gordon of J.D. Gordon Communications. Also joining us, Jim Hanson, Executive Vice President with the Center for Security Policy. Gentlemen, thanks to you both for making time here tonight on Newsmax Prime. J.D., first to you, what is your take on U.S. Special Forces in Syria? Is this a major shift in policy, or have we had some of those guys on the ground there before?
Hi, JD. Good to see you. Happy Halloween. Well, I think it's a small step in the right direction, but the operative word is small. Just a few dozen Special Forces troops aren't going to make that much of a difference in Syria. They're going to be in the Kurdish-controlled areas, so I think it's going to make the Kurds a little more effective in fighting the Islamic State, so that's good. However, at the end of the day, JD, it's not going to defeat the Islamic State. It's not even going to be close. It seems like every time President Obama at least moves in the right direction, listening to his military advisors, it's not nearly enough. The real problem, JD, is this proxy war between the Saudis and the Iranians on who's going to rule the Middle East and Islam. The extremist Sunnis, backed by the Saudis, or the extremist Shia, backed by the Iranians. So until we solve that problem and have a situation where we fix Syria and Iraq with a long-term strategy, separating the Sunnis, Shia, and Kurds, this war's never going to end. So it's just a minor detail. It's a Band-Aid.
Well, you talk about these forces, and the commonality seems to be extremists on both sides. Jim Hanson, does this move make any sense to you? As J.D. noted, the number of special ops forces going in is so small, less than 50. Will that even make an impact?
I think the biggest impact it makes is the change in policy and the fact that President Obama is finally admitting that American combat power is necessary in this fight. Now, 50 is a small number. Okay, granted. But they are force multipliers. They will allow us to bring supplies and to use the combat effectiveness of U.S. airstrikes and other things in a better way for the Kurds and with them. So I think from that perspective, it's a step in the right direction. But as both of you JDs have mentioned, it's a small one.
Let me go to that other JD again, Jim, the smarter JD at Newsmax Washington, to get his take on this. JD, is this move going to help strengthen moderate rebels if such a force exists there in Syria?
Well, it remains to be seen. These guys are going to be operating in the Kurdish-held areas, and so we're already on board with the Kurds. It's the moderate rebels we're really not sure if they can be trusted or not. So I don't really know if it's going to help too many moderate rebels. It will surely help the Kurds. But again, that's just a detail. What we really need to be doing, JD, I think, is to be looking at the reality, and that is Syria and Iraq are these artificial states created by colonial powers. And so once you take out the dictator, it's chaos. It's open season from one group on the other, the Shia, Sunnis, Kurds, and other minorities in Iraq and Syria. Iraq and Syria these days are failed states, and I think they ought to be partitioned into smaller ones so we could separate these fighting groups. Until that's done, this is just going to keep going on because the Saudis and the Iranians keep pouring in billions of dollars, fighters, weapons, and they're not going to stop until they get their way. But very few people are actually talking about the logical solution, and that is partition of these countries and stopping radical Islam from both Saudi Arabia and both Iran.
Jim, we know the Russians are running air operations above Syria, and they have ground troops in there as well. Is it more likely that we'll see a U.S.-Russia confrontation or a possible collaboration, in your opinion?
I don't know that we're going to actually collaborate in any meaningful way. The Russians are there to bolster their puppet, Assad, and they're not going to do much more than that in the fight against ISIS. Token gestures, and more than anything, they're going to use that as diplomatic cover for their mission of propping up him. I think the point that J.D. made was very valid. We need to look at the actual borders and who lives in them. And I think the Sunni who live in both Iraq and Syria at this point could use their own state. The Kurds, for all intents and purposes, in Iraq have one. And the sooner we recognize that and support them as an ally and potentially use the Sunni tribes in Anbar in Iraq, and I'm not sure who we can find in Syria to help, but at least the ones in Anbar to take down ISIS there, that'll do a lot more good than simply token gestures of 50 troops or so in the Syrian area of the border.
So a change in the map, either through diplomacy or more likely through military matters, may be what's at hand. Jim Hanson and J.D. Gordon, both in Washington, D.C., we thank you very much for your time. After the break, more concerns from the Middle East. Camp Liberty in Iraq attacked. We'll tell you who done it when we continue. You've probably heard about the shocking new book, Unlikable, The Problem with Hillary by Edward Klein. Unlikable has already skyrocketed to the top of the bestseller lists. It's probably the most powerful expose on Hillary ever written. The author, Edward Klein, wrote the #1 New York Times bestsellers, The Amateur and Blood Feud. Now in Unlikable, Klein offers a stunning, powerful expose of Hillary Clinton and her floundering race for the White House. With unprecedented access, Klein meticulously recreates conversations and details of Hillary Clinton's behind-the-scenes plotting. Klein also reveals the angry rivalry between Hillary and Barack Obama. Now, Unlikable retails for $29.95, but you can get it with our free offer. So, get this almost $30 value today. Just go online or call the toll-free number on your screen. With the 2016 election fast approaching, you need to get Unlikable and be armed with the truth about Hillary. Check out our incredible offer right now.